add one word?
Oh, of course, yeah, absolutely.
Zubaira's comment about Zhang Chunxian. In Chinese newspapers, they reported Zhang Chunxian within this few years learned one sentence in Uyghur. 你吃了吗? Did you eat? That's the only language he learned in Uyghur. Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks for the good news.
So we get to the last presentation on our panel today, and this is from Greg Fay, who became UHRP's project manager in September 2012. He worked previously for 2 years at the Committee to Protect Journalists in New York, and for 1 year prior at the New York and China offices of China Labor Watch. As an undergraduate intern at Human Rights in China, Greg helped to organize a conference featuring UHRP in New York in 2006. He personally collaborated with UHRP the next year when he obtained funding from the Watson Institute at Brown University's Islamic Voices Fund to support a lecture at Brown about human rights abuses against the Uyghur people. He graduated from Brown University in 2007 with a BA in East Asian Studies, and his honors thesis on bilingual education in East Turkestan was awarded a prize for East Asian politics and peace. Greg was subsequently awarded a Fulbright to study for 1 year in Urumqi, focusing his research on Han Chinese who study the Uyghur language as their university major. Greg began studying Uyghur culture at the University of Hawaii during an undergraduate semester exchange program. He did Mandarin language training at Duke University in Beijing through CET at Heilongjiang University in Harbin, and Uyghur language training at Indiana University with support from the Social Science Research Council. Over to you, Greg.
Thank you everyone for coming today, and happy Uyghur Language Day. Uyghur Til Kunga Mubarak Bolsun. I'm here today to talk about our new report, Uyghur Voices on Education. And it's very exciting to be on this panel because all three of my other panelists are very prominently featured in this new report. The report is about Uyghur people's own experiences in the bilingual education system, with some added commentary and added context by myself and by our moderator Henrik, to give some more information about these policies and what constitutes the policy, what are the numbers. But what really grounds this report are the stories of Uyghur people who have been through the education system. And I just wanted to give a little bit more information how we went about getting these stories, and that is really through the work of Zubaida. Zubaida came onto the staff of the Uyghur Human Rights Project almost 2 years ago now as our Chinese outreach coordinator to work with Chinese democracy community and to produce our research in the Chinese language. So we're not saying we hate the Chinese language, and Zubaida uses that tool to educate people about East Turkestan every day. And part of what she has done is to run a blog on which young Uyghur people can write in Chinese and also educate this Chinese-speaking community about what they've experienced. And one of those blogs was by Nigara, telling this story that she just told you today about learning the Uyghur language after 17 years of education in Chinese. That blog, originally published in Chinese, we've translated into English for our new report. We also ran in this report a blog by Zubaida about her school being closed down as China merged Uyghur language and Chinese language schools as part of its bilingual education policy. So that policy wasn't just about creating schools, it was also about closing down schools that were formerly Uyghur language only. And in doing so, a great deal of history was also lost. And as for our UAA Vice President Ilshad, his Chinese language research was also heavily cited in our report. So this is a major issue for the Uyghur people and for Uyghur human rights. As you can gather from all of the panelists who've spoken today, language is a major part of the Uyghur identity, and China's attempts to eliminate the Uyghur language from the education system is perceived by many Uyghurs as an attempt to assimilate them, to destroy their language, and to take away their ability to speak their language and practice their culture. This was a policy first conceived of in the 80s, started to be implemented in the 90s. In 2007, our organization, the Uyghur Human Rights Project, actually wrote our first major report. Amy Rieger in the audience was part of writing that. And that was talking about, in 2007, what this bilingual education policy was going to do to the Uyghur people and to Uyghur students coming up through this education system. This year, 8 years later, we had an opportunity to revisit that. After almost a decade, what has that policy done in East Turkestan? Just to give you some numbers, in 2007 there were only about under 300,000 students in the program receiving bilingual education. By 2012 there were 1.4 million. And the policy aim is to have all students in East Turkestan receive bilingual education by 2020. In 2007, when we wrote our report, we reported about one major policy shift was to eliminate Uyghur language from universities entirely. So now it's 13 years later, and there is no Uyghur language instruction outside of Uyghur literature major. So as Zubaida mentioned, all of this policy also comes in the context of statements made by political leaders that malign the Uyghur language. Wang Letren said that it is out of step with the 21st century, which sends the message to Uyghurs that their language is not valued by the Chinese leadership. In 2009, Nur Bekri, another high-level political leader, made a connection between the Uyghur language and terrorism, said that terrorists would target Uyghurs who can't speak Mandarin because they're isolated from society. And just last year, another political leader said that if we are to maintain social stability and ethnic unity in Xinjiang, we must put education and employment work first in an even more prominent position and further raise the quality of bilingual education. So this policy is not just about education. In political rhetoric, it's been linked to terrorism. It's been linked to social stability. And this is the justification that the Chinese government gives for what it's doing, eliminating the Uyghur language in the education system. And you can see the space for Uyghur language in Chinese society more broadly has also been diminished. And that is part and parcel with broader issues of freedom of expression. Uyghur writers like Nur Muhammad Yasin, who wrote a poem about a wild pigeon who wanted to be free, was put into prison. He's still there today. People don't even know if he's still alive. So Uyghur people have a limited space in which they can produce literature, in which they can write in their own language. A major issue that has come, in the internet era is the freedom to write in Uyghur online. And after ethnic unrest in the Uyghur homeland in 2009, the government shut down the internet throughout East Turkestan. And after 10 months, it was restored, but over 80% of Uyghur language websites were completely eliminated. And with that, when a tremendous amount of Uyghur language writing that was done by regular people, on the top 3 websites, Diarim, Shabnam, and Salkin, there had been over 200,000 users who were eliminated. they had written over 2 million posts, over 150,000 threads. All of that was gone. So we have seen this space for Uyghur language in society growing ever smaller. We've also seen a link between employability and the ability to speak Chinese. Businesses will blatantly discriminate against Uyghurs who don't speak Chinese. And even Uyghurs who do speak Chinese face discrimination in the job market. The Uyghur economist Ilham Tohti in 2013 wrote an essay in which he cited government statistics that said that only 17% of Uyghur graduates can find employment after they finish university, only 17%. And that was the official statistic. He said that in his own research he found it to be even lower, like 15%, and that was much lower than the percentage of Han University graduates who could find employment. And that was another major topic that we featured in one of the translated blogs in this report. The idea that if you struggle to learn Chinese language, you sacrifice your own language, you're still not going to get a job if you're a Uyghur, which sends this message that education is useless. And that has a major psychic effect on people, on students trying to go through this bilingual education system. In that essay, in this report, the author looks at the civil service examination results and found that in over 7,000 positions that were awarded in 2013 in East Turkestan, less than 12% of them went to Uyghurs. And the other issue, which Ilshad was discussing, is teacher employability. Most of the Han Chinese teachers don't speak Uyghur, and they don't need to, but all Uyghur teachers need to speak Mandarin in order to get employment in the Chinese education system today. In 2011, a few years after our last report, RFA ran an article in which they found that 1,000 primary school teachers had lost their job in the past year because they didn't speak good enough Mandarin. And these are good teachers. They're just teachers who didn't meet these requirements for bilingual education. And as a result, there is a massive shortage now of teachers who are qualified to teach in Mandarin in East Turkestan. So, it's somewhat of a crazy situation in that there are many qualified teachers in the region, but they don't speak good enough Chinese to get a job. As a result, today there are 30,000 positions. There's a shortage of 30,000 bilingual teachers. And one method that the government has used to fill those jobs is to offer employment to Han Chinese migrants to the region. So bring in a lot of new Han immigrants. And there are many issues with these teachers that perhaps don't have the qualifications that are necessary to be good teachers in the region, and definitely will not speak the Uyghur language. They live in segregated housing, and they have no opportunity to learn Uyghur language even if they'd like to. One of the biggest changes that's taken place since our 2007 report is the expansion of this program into earlier and earlier phases of the education system. So whereas when the bilingual education program was first implemented in 2004, Mandarin was to become the primary language in elementary through high school. Now what we've seen is increasing number of kindergarten and even preschool have switched to bilingual education into Chinese. So Uyghur students are not even receiving even the most basic, earliest level instruction in their mother tongue. And a tremendous amount, again, of funding and of teacher recruitment has gone into making that program possible. This year already, 450,000 students have received bilingual education from kindergarten on. And there are 3,500 vacancies available now for kindergarten teachers in East Turkestan who can teach bilingually, essentially in Chinese. Another major issue that exists is a funding gap between Uyghur language or bilingual and Chinese schools in the region. Another statistic that Ilham Tohti, the Uyghur economist, put out in 2013, based on his research of 3 high schools in Atush, he found that the class size of Uyghur classes was 50 students, whereas for Han classes it was 30 students. So there is a great strain on the resources created by this bilingual education program. One person who I really wanted to mention, who has been a champion of the Uyghur language education, and particularly of educating Uyghurs at this young kindergarten level age, is Abduveli Ayub. He's a linguist who was actually educated at the University of Kansas from 2009 to 2011, and returned to East Turkestan in 2012, and opened a Uyghur kindergarten in Kashgar. It was open from 2012 to around 13, and then closed by the authorities. It subsequently reopened, but Abduveli Ayub himself was arrested in August 2013. For nearly 9 months, there were no charges. Until May 2014, finally he was charged with illegally collecting donations for his Uyghur language kindergarten. I mean, he had solicited donations online, and he had sold honey with the school's logo on the honey bottles. So it seems trumped up charges, and what was really happening was Abduveli Ayub was being targeted for his work educating Uyghur youth in their language at that kindergarten level. Thankfully, Abduveli Ayub was released on appeal in November of 2014. 2 of his associates who opened the school with him received sentence reductions, but remained in prison at that time. Now, Abduveli Ayub, I was able to do an interview with one of his former students last year at the time of his imprisonment. He was not against the education of Uyghur children in Chinese language. Rather, he was advocating for additive bilingualism, to first build a strong foundation for Uyghur children in their mother tongue before adding Chinese language as a truly bilingual curriculum, as Zubaira was describing. Now finally, I'm going to discuss one other assimilative program that has been part of China's bilingual education strategy, which is called the Neidi Ban, the Xinjiang Gaozhong Neidi Ban, in which high school or junior high school students are offered the option to enroll in inner China, to leave East Turkestan and go to a school in a Chinese city, thousands of miles from their home, essentially a boarding school, so they can have a totally immersive high school education in Chinese language. This is a program that originally China implemented in Tibet in the 1980s and brought to East Turkestan in the year 2000, and we have seen it grow tremendously from 1,000 students in 12 cities in its first year to last year over 36,000 students in 45 cities and in 93 schools. The purpose of the program is to give Uyghurs, is to develop minority talent in such a way that will support the motherland's unity and ethnic unity. And it is clearly a campaign of assimilation, an opportunity for Uyghur people to assimilate into Chinese culture. And it is one that is made very attractive to Uyghur families because school tuition is offered at a much reduced rate. So one scholar found that students could pay $145 to be part of this Neidi Ban program versus $350 to receive an education locally. So as a result, many students will apply for this interior Chinese program. Now, I myself, during my education in China, I studied both Chinese and Uyghur languages in China, and I spent one semester in Harbin in 2007 and was able to meet several Uyghur students who had recently graduated from that Gaozhong Neidiban program. And it was very interesting because they were among the first high school graduates to go through the program. They had been in its second or third year of implementation. And what they had told me was that they enrolled in this program, A, because it would save their families money, but B, because it seemed to be an honor or a prestige to be chosen for this program based on their academic credentials. Now, what they found after they enrolled in the program, for the 4 years of their high school, the program was structured in such a way that they were in a group of Uyghur students in this Chinese language high school, in this Chinese high school in an interior Chinese city, and that group became very cohesive. So in many ways, their Uyghur identity became strengthened by the program because they were together. They grew to resist almost the assimilation that the program had intended. And then after they graduated from the program, they didn't know this going in, but they had more limited options in terms of where they could attend university. So they sort of wound up in Harbin at this small university campus at the outskirts of town because when they took their college entrance exam, they didn't have the opportunity to return to East Turkestan. So talking to these students, I mean, the sense that I got was that, you know, the program in some ways had backfired. I mean, the students had resisted learning Chinese, had formed this solidarity with one another, and yet still China is investing a tremendous amount of resources in this program, in bringing Uyghur students out of East Turkestan and educating them in inner China. The program has limited effectiveness, and given the challenges facing the education system in East Turkestan, it seems to me that funding would be put to much better use, invested in the local education system. That's it for me.